Learn from People Who Lived It is supported by the woman-owned Advanced Systems Integration. ASI is an audio-visual integrator with offices in Minnesota and Arizona. If you're the IT director or on the IT staff and you need to build out collaboration systems or sound masking, they can help. And they pay special attention to that last 5%, which is often the most trying but important. Video walls, surveillance cameras, meeting spaces, and so much more. We've got a link to ASI in our show description, or you can go there yourself at asi-av.com to see their gallery of work. When you're going through it, it's so important to put your thoughts out into the universe. And I mean either saying them, articulating your thoughts to people, communicating them with real words, or writing them down. And if you're into writing over talking, then I want to suggest Not a Diary. It's a really cool product by a dude named Sam. Listen to this.
So what I've launched is a product called Not a Diary. And what it is it's an SMS-based journaling software that sends you a journal entry in the form of a text message straight to your phone every single day.
Plans start at just a couple of bucks a month, and you'll be surprised at how good you feel by just getting it out.
I think Not a Diary helps the most because kids don't want to carry around another journal. They don't want to download another app where there's 100 different action items inside that app that they have to navigate through. They want it to be super simple.
Get connected and find out more. We've got a special link in our show description for Not a Diary.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm 52 years old.
What story are you here to share?
I am here to tell a story in a story about a journey through some tough times after the loss of my whole family, only to recuperate and then to be hit with cancer.
Who do you hope hears this?
I'm really hoping that anyone who is in the midst of grief because the loss of someone they love, I want them to know that there's another side, and I hope that they persevere, as well as all those peeps out there who may be struggling right now with some sort of disease, whether that be cancer or something else. You have to just look death and fear in the face and know that there's good. There's always good out there. And you can get through it and be on the other side and really have a good, clear picture of what you want the rest of your life to be like.
So when I met our next guest, she was the principal at my kid's school. We've always vibed, and I'm really glad that she wanted to be a part of this project. 9 years ago, she lost her sister, and then her mom, and then her dad. But wait, the hits aren't done yet, are they, Lisa? Because as you may have heard in that introduction, she most recently battled cancer. So, Lisa, welcome to our podcast. We are here alongside Troy DeSmit from Spirit Quest. Troy, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Matthew. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Troy. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Let's jump right in. You know, I really enjoy starting with the first 10 years of people's lives. There's so many things that happen in those first 10 years that are pretty important. So give us an idea and a feel for Lisa from 0 to 10. Where are you from? What's family life like? That kind of thing.
So I'm from the Midwest, a town just outside of Chicago, Elgin, Illinois. Grew up, in a middle-class family. My mom at the time was a stay-home mom. So, I got the pleasures of having a mom around every day. My dad was a really hard worker. I know that he had worked since the age of 9 or 10. And so he was always very busy. He was a truck driver for most of my life. So, he'd be home for 3 weeks and then gone for 3 weeks and then, home for a stint and back out again. So, those first 10 years of time, I spent a lot of time with my mom, and, my dad did his best to, be there for us when he could. I definitely was a daddy's girl, I guess, when he was home. But pretty stable, space. I always felt like we had what we needed most of the time. We got by with we were able to make ends meet, and we lived simple. We definitely, we lived from paycheck to paycheck, but nothing too crazy or wild, right? And from my frame of mind, we did a lot of shopping at Kmart, and at the time, blue light specials and layaway was the name of the game. So, that's kind of how I lived my life those first 10 years.
Lisa and I lived the same life. I don't know how many shopping trips to Kmart I had. Okay, so you have a fairly normal life. You grow up, you go to college, you decide you're going to, because are you a teacher for a long time before you're a principal, or are you always in administration? No,
I was a teacher for about 10 years before I became an administrator.
Okay. And so, this is Lisa's life. And as this is all unfolding, you get married, and you have how many children?
I have 2. I got married pretty young. I wasn't quite 21 yet when I got married. I was like 20 and, almost more than 3/4.
Hindsight 2020, you still look back on that decision the same way?
My husband and I all the time talk about how lucky we were.
Yeah.
And that getting married, so young, I was 20, he was 24.
Well, let's start to get closer to, the reason for the visit here. As we mentioned in the onset, you were 44 years old when your sister died. That was 9 years ago. As I understand it, she was only 39 years old, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So I think here's what's a good idea to do. Let's just take a pause. You are 44. Give me a blueprint of what's going on in your life as this happens to your sister. Where are you professionally? Where's the kids? All that.
So I had just been named the principal of my school, and I was really excited. My kids were still pretty young, right around 8 and 10 years old at the time. And so, I'm starting into this new space, new side of profession that I haven't been before, trying to be, a mom and still maintain all those pieces while starting a new job. And then, of course, being a wife at the same time. So those are 3 jobs sometimes that are hard to juggle.
What was your relationship like with your sister?
My sister and I were always we were different from one another. I was the firstborn. So, I definitely probably have what I believe probably is the typical A-type personality, go-getter, trying to be straight A student. And stereotypically my sister, was the baby, and found herself in trouble. I was a rule follower. She was not. And so we did argue, and, we were almost 5 years apart. And so we argued over clothes, and we argued over makeup and things like that when I lived at home. And then as we became adults, her journey in life and my journey in life were very different. And from my perspective, she really had a hard journey. And so probably at the time, as trying to be a parent, a mom, a professional, I was not always the best sister. And I didn't agree with all the things that she chose to do in life. And so we had times where we got along really well, and then we had times where we didn't get along really well. And it wasn't until my kids were born that we finally found kind of a common space of she could be the fun, good aunt to my children. And, she loved them with all her heart. And I appreciated that. that's kind of where we were able to at least have some common ground.
So, Troy, I want to bring you into the conversation right now because so many of us have a brother, a sister, a relative, maybe it's a friend, who's on a journey of their own. And it's not one we can influence. It's not one we can change. But boys, it's sure hard to watch them go through things that are tough. So what do you say in these cases, Troy? I mean, what's good advice on this subject?
Boy, that's such a tough one. I'm also an older brother to a younger brother, and it wasn't until I had my emergency open heart surgery that my brother flew back from Seattle and shared with me something that was really profound when he started to contemplate my life and what I meant to him as his older brother, and why he resented me for so many years was the fact that I had come in first. I was the older child, and for some reason he had it in his brain that he always wanted to be first, which he wound up being in a lot of cases, with the exception of being born. But it was interesting that through all those years, he always had this underlying angst about the position that we were in and how that created so much conflict in our relationship. When siblings are fighting and squabbling, I always find it very interesting to look at the birth order and to see the responsible one that follows the rules being so often the firstborn, and where the others lie in that when it comes to the peacemaker or the free spirit, if you will. And it can be very hard to be your brother's or your sister's keeper. And I just think that at some point it becomes healthy to know where you end and the other picks up, as in all relationships, and what we have control over and what we don't have control over. And it's such a great lesson to be able to allow someone their own path. And at the same time, watching them as they go through those trials and tribulations. And it's a tough place to be when they're walking off or wandering off the road.
Yeah, that's the truth. I saw something the other day that I think just will resonate so hard right now. It was something that I saw online, and it's a quote, and it says, "You can't heal people you love. You can't make choices for them. You can't rescue them. You can't promise they won't journey alone. You can loan them your map, but this trip is theirs." And that really resonates with your story. So when your sister passes away, what's the dynamic like now in your space? Because you're the only child, right? Yes. And
okay. Right away, I probably because I'm an A-type personality and I'm, take charge maybe is the right word. I become a big focus for my parents. My sister had been living at home. In the end, she'd had a stroke. She'd been living at home. My parents had been taking care of her. They were her caretakers. And her functioning was very limited. And so when she passed away, I became the center of attention. And they relied on me to help them navigate through their grief, their loss, and really became a focus.
What was that toll like on mom and dad?
My mom really withdrew from the world, and she blamed everybody under the sun, and she couldn't understand why it was the way it was and how it happened the way it happened. And, so she withdrew from a lot of things, activities, social events, everything, was always tampered with, the death of my sister. So she really withdrew from life, and blamed a lot of things on a lot of different people. for the loss of my sister, and my dad was trying to cope with dealing with my mom, I guess is the words I would use, but dealing with my mom as well as, trying to get her to move forward. But at the same time, there was a lot of energy spent on, my family becoming the center of their focus and wanting to control, be a part of, I would say almost a codependency. I know that's a topic for people, but codependency and wanting us to be codependent on them.
After your sister passes away, I always find this to be an interesting question for people that have lost somebody. There is a relationship that you have with somebody in life, and there is a relationship that you have with somebody in death. What is your relationship like now in death with your sister?
I look for signs from her. So her favorite thing was butterflies. And so it's something that I started. I don't know if I started because it helped me or if I started because it helped my kids, or maybe a little bit of both. But my kids were devastated at the loss of their aunt. And, so we knew that she loved butterflies. It was something that was always a part of a gift that we gave her, especially in those last few years. And so every time we would see a butterfly, that would be Aunt Jenny's watching over us. And, she's making sure we're okay, or she's letting us know that she's good. And that's kind of how that started.
It's so reassuring when we can see signs, and it's such a blessing for kids to be able to take part in that. Also, I'm curious, Lisa, as someone who works with children every day, how did you relay the information to your children that Jenny had died?
Well, I was very honest. They knew that Jenny had been sick, and they knew that she wasn't, she didn't feel well most of the time, and that it was, God had decided it was her time. And, sometimes we feel like the time should be different, but, God makes that determination and gets to decide. And he decided it was time for her to be in a different place. And, we had to, though that was hard to understand, we could still love her. We could still talk to her. We could still, see things. And I think that's probably where the butterfly component came from. Yeah. Just trying to give them a way to grieve, but at the same time, still feel connected. So even to this day, my kids are now 19 and 21. And when they see a butterfly, their first comment is, "Oh, look, Aunt Jenny came to visit."
It's important to note that there's a parallel thing happening here, because as your sister dies, as things are starting to kind of decline in your family, you're kicking butt at school. Things are going really well for you on the job.
Yes.
And you are kind of at the height of your career, right? Your school has just achieved something that's really incredible while all of this is happening.
That is true. We were able to do two different things. We received an A+ status, which is a big deal in the state of Arizona to be an A+ school. And then immediately after that, we are awarded the National Blue Ribbon Award, which is a very prestigious award that's given by the federal government.
How did that feel, Lisa?
It was really great. I guess I'm a person who's, I think, able to do pretty well of put things in boxes, right? So my personal life is my personal life, and my professional life is my professional life. And so to be able to put away, all the personal junk, and really be able to hone in on what needs to happen for, my students at school, and for my teachers to be recognized was really, it was an amazing moment. That moment when we got to go to Washington, D.C., I got to hold that award in my hand. And when they handed it to me, it was the coolest feeling in the whole world.
Back to the other story now. Your mom or your dad dies next?
My mom.
So if you can believe it all while this is happening, then your mom starts to decline. And can I ask you a question? You and I kind of talked about this a little bit on our kind of pre-interview, but do you think your mom died of a broken heart of losing a daughter?
There were other things going on, but my mom was so devastated when my sister died that I do feel like that played a part in her decline in some ways. I know it wasn't exactly like this in reality, but I felt like the minute my sister left, my mom started slowly leaving. And she, within a very short time frame, began to decline mentally. And we started seeing things with dementia, not remembering things and putting things in wrong places. And then my dad and I did get the diagnosis that she had Alzheimer's. She quickly then she couldn't walk on her by herself. She couldn't remember how to walk.
Was it hard for you to go through that? Because growing up, your mom's kind of your go-to, right? Dad's on the road a lot. You and mom are really tight. But
it was very hard. My mom and I talked every day on the phone. We didn't really live that far away from each other. It was only 30 minutes, but there were, and then as time went on, that declined and she couldn't talk on the phone anymore. And, so I couldn't have those same kinds of conversations that we were always able to have. And there did come a point when I knew she didn't know who I was when I would see her.
Did faith at all play a part in your life growing up, practicing a certain faith or having religion in your life?
Yes. During my first, formative years, we were a part of the Methodist church, and went to church every Sunday. And then when we moved from the Midwest to Arizona, I was around 11 or 12 years old, and my mom never found a church that she really liked, and so that kind of lapsed a little. And it wasn't until I was an adult myself, getting ready to think about having kids, that I went back to church. And then church had been a focus in my life, and I became Catholic.
Have you found that your faith has helped you along in this process?
Yes, because I feel like, there was a time after my sister died and my mom talked, and she talked about that there couldn't possibly be a God. Because if there'd been a God, then he wouldn't have, he wouldn't have taken my sister. Yeah. And that was really hard because that was something that she was conveying to my children. And so I was fighting the good fight of, trying to explain to my kids that, my mom is, grandma's just sad and, she's hurt and she's trying to understand and, she feels the need to blame somebody. And so she's choosing to blame, God. And so I spent a lot of time going to church, praying, talking, having little conversations. To try to persevere.
Did you or your mother or your father go through any counseling after the death of your sister?
My parents did not. My dad was very much against any kind of counseling. That was for the weak. And I think it really would have definitely helped my mom in particular. But my dad did not feel that was necessary or, needed. We did my children and I did see somebody a few times because I guess I was more worried about them than I was about myself. And I was worried about how they were handling, losing their aunt at them so young and her so young. And, they were doing a great job, I think, in comparison to their mother, but, and so we did see somebody a few times and kind of talk through it.
Do you think that kids have maybe a greater understanding of death and dying than we give them credit for?
Yes, I do. Yeah, they definitely, and I have seen as a principal, I've had to deal with kids many times over in my years of losing a parent. And while they're sad and they grieve, they are just so resilient and seem to just have this clarity that adults don't have.
Yeah, we get a little cloudy as we get older. That's a thing. That is a thing. That is real. That is real, right? So, okay, I'd like to move up now because, if your story seems wild already, we're just getting started because now your mom passes away.
She dies from complications of Alzheimer's. She ends up, one of the things that happens is, you lose your ability and memory to do things. And the things you think are that you do without even knowing that you're doing, right? How you walk, how you talk, how you eat. And my mom is struggling with remembering how to chew food. And she ends up one morning, my dad's in the kitchen, my mom's at the table, he's cut her food up, and she chokes and can't breathe. And my dad tries to do the Heimlich, and he's not strong enough. And she can't stand, and he struggles and struggles. And she is then, she stops breathing, and the paramedics arrive, and they try to resuscitate her, and they're unable to.
The magnitude of that moment, right? To
Yep.
be a husband who can't save his wife. What does this do to you now? Because how far away are we from losing your sister? It's not a very big amount of time, is it?
It's like 2 years. It's 2 years, I think.
That's fresh.
Yep.
That's, I remember losing my dad at 47. The first 5-6 years felt pretty fresh. So, I would say that you were still kind of fresh off that. So how are you feeling about this now with your mom? And then what's going through your mind as now you're like, it's just you and dad left?
Ooh. So my dad and I, we got along, but as adults, as an adult myself, when I started to become independent, make my own decisions, be married, have children, my dad and I didn't always see eye to eye. And I thought, oh crap, I'm going to have to take care of him. He's going to be a pain in my ass. Mm-hmm. Is honestly the thought that I had.
Yeah, of course.
And at the same time, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, how my mom is his whole life. Yeah. Well, what am I going to do? And I honestly didn't know. I wasn't sure.
Did you get a sense that at that moment that the amount of responsibility that you were going to be taking under was going to be changing, and that you would be needing to step up and take a greater responsibility?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that had been building for a while. When my sister died, I was responsible for managing, the funeral and all that went with that, right? And little things here and there to try to help manage. Then when my mom, and then I had to help in that, and then help clean her things and out of the house, and there was this building sense of responsibility.
Yet you still have your own family that you're rolling with, your own career that you're rolling with.
Yes. And, that's a struggle, right? To try to balance. And, now my kids are a little bit older, but they're at that, that tween early teenager stage. And I know it's now even more important than ever that I'm present. And how do I maintain my presence as a mom of 2 kids and be the wife that I desire to be, and be the professional and the principal of a building that I know needs to happen.
Yeah. Do you ever just feel like a fraud because you'd be putting on such a face?
Well, yes, because I am at this, I'm starting at this point, to be able to say, okay, there's no time for me. And so, I have to put this away and I have to operate. I become somewhat of a robot, I guess, in some regards, because I know that I don't feel good. I don't feel right. And at the same time, I'm like, I know I have to do these things. And so I go do these things because I do this when I'm a principal. I do this when I'm a mom. I do this when I'm a wife, and so it becomes very, I guess, robotic.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're good at what you do. How long does it between losing your mom and then losing your dad?
4 months.
Wow.
4 short months. Those
4 months are pretty tough, aren't they?
They're very tough. My dad can only talk about my mom. He within a week of my mom passing away, he wants to just go through the house and clean everything. And that was devastating because, how do you get rid of things that fast? Right. But I also know that there's a reason for that. And that there's a reason why he wants to do that because of grief and hurt and feelings. Right. And so that really is a big struggle. And so, it becomes challenging. It becomes really challenging.
And then ultimately, you're the one that ends up finding your dad not alive.
I do. Yes.
Yeah, Lisa, the hits that are coming here, let's just hit the pause button. It's all so much. So I'm just wondering, how are things in your own home with your kids and your husband and all of this death? That's heavy. So how are things in your own home, which is your safe space, right?
Yeah. Chaotic. My children now at this point are, like I said, they're close to teenagers or are teenagers. And, my parents, when they were little, my mom in particular, she was their caretaker when they were, when I went back to work, she was who watched them. And from the time they were infants until they went to kindergarten. And so, they have a really close relationship with both of my both of my parents, and they are devastated. And so trying to explain, again, now that they're a little older, what that is and how they feel and why it's probably for the best, and trying to create some justifications. They're grieving, and my husband is he's having to, take on some responsibilities. We now have a house that now that my dad goes, and now we have this second house that belonged to my parents that we're having to figure out, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to manage it? It's where I lived. It's where I grew up after I moved out here. So,
The question I've kind of been wanting to ask you since we got started today was, at what stage, because I'm sure it happened, but at what stage did you have this realization like, whoa, I am the only one left in my family?
pretty immediately. Honestly.
I would imagine.
It was within a 24-hour period of the realization of I'm by myself. I have no one. And I think that's hard for people to understand unless they've actually experienced it. Because, my husband's a great guy, but he definitely got his feelings hurt when I said I'm an orphan. Those are the words I actually used. I'm an orphan. And he was like, you're not an orphan. You have a family. And I said, I know I have a family. Like, I know I have my kids and I have my husband, but my family, as in, your parents, your siblings, I don't have that. I'm by myself. I'm alone. And that's a weird feeling. It's a really, really weird feeling.
Yeah, I remember in our pre-interview, you were saying to me that your own dad kind of had those same feelings after he lost his daughter and his wife. This feeling of I'm all alone, and you were kind of trying to say to him, "No, Dad, you still have us." And then when he passed away, you found yourself saying the same thing. And here's your husband going, "No, hon, you still have us." But you're correct. You're correct. The people you grew up with are not here anymore.
Yes. And I think, that realization of I had talked to my dad and I had said that to my dad because, my dad was just wallowing. And I kept saying, there's all these things to look forward to. Megan's in high school, Ben's starting high school, there's going to be all these things that are going to happen and you need to be there to see them. You need to be a part of them. You need to, we want you here. We want you to do this. These are all these things we still need to do together. And then, to turn around and then feel exactly the way, my dad was feeling was a little bit of a smack upside the head this is why he felt this way.
Okay, so this is all unfolded and we're still not done. The trials and tribulations for you, Lisa, there are still more things to come.
Yes.
And before we get to all that, I always tell people, I think death is probably one of the greatest teachers the world will ever know. I just think you learn so much about yourself when you lose somebody close to you. And now you have to figure out what this thing looks like without him. That's a real soul searching moment for a lot of people. So After you lose your sister, after you lose your mom, after you lose your dad, what has death started to teach you about you, the world, all of it?
Well, I think at first, you wallow, or at least I did. I wallowed. And there was this sense of, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I really stopped taking care of myself in a lot of ways. And so I think that I had to sort of hit, for me, rock bottom's different for everybody, right? But my rock bottom, before I could really start to think about moving forward. So I got to the point where, I operated as I needed to, and but really, I felt terrible, both mentally and physically, but I also didn't care. There's a point that happens in which I have an episode where I end up at the emergency room, and I think I'm having a heart attack.
How long is this after your dad dies?
Not a very long span of time. I don't even remember.
Weeks?
I should, but I don't. Months, maybe a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, I feel horrible. And, so they tell me I'm not having a heart attack. I'm probably having more of an anxiety attack, as well as, hey, by the way, you have high blood pressure and you're not taking care of yourself. And here's all the things that are wrong with you. So I was like, oh, okay. All right, whatever. And I travel a little bit longer on that road, and I have to go get a new license, driver's license. And, it's a weird thing for it to happen, that it would be a driver's license that would cause this revelation, but it is. The driver's license comes in the mail, and I look at the picture and I'm like, who is that? I'm like, that's not me. And I don't look like that. Then I kind of stop and I look at myself in the mirror and I look at the picture on the driver's license and I'm like, holy crap, that is me.
What did you not like about the photo?
A lot of things. I don't like a lot of things. I've got dark circles under my eyes. I'm for lack of kindness, I'm fat. I don't look anything like I think I look, or have looked. And I'm like, so the combination between the trip to the emergency room and that, I start to think there's something wrong with me. Like there is something wrong with me. And so I go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you got this, you need to take better care of yourself. You're not healthy. You're going to die if you don't do something about this. And that was like a huge slap that I guess I needed. So the doctor says, the only way you're going to get out of this is if you do these things, exercise, eat right, take care of yourself. Are you taking time for yourself? Are you doing things for yourself? And that answer was no, all the way across. I mean, yes. Was I trying to be a mom? Mm-hmm. Was I trying to do my job? Mm-hmm. Was I trying to be a wife? Mm-hmm. But was I really doing anything for me to make sure that I was taken care of? No, I wasn't. And so begins my journey of, I start to walk. I go to the doctor. The doctor also gives me some medication. I go and talk to someone a few times, trying to get my head clear, steered right. And as I walk, the walk turns into hiking. The hiking turns into running, which becomes an obsession a little bit. I feel better when I do that. My mind feels clear. I feel more normal. I have the time to process and think about things that I haven't. And with each step and each choice I make in trying to do things for me and find time for me, that's when the change happens. That's really when it occurs.
So the sense I get is you're busy in your day putting on masks. You're putting on masks for your husband to be his wife. You're putting on masks to be the principal. So your identities were all tied up in all of these various activities you were involved in. And the running was the opportunity for you to take the mask off and to be Lisa and to grieve. And
yes,
what I'm curious about is, with your grieving, what have you learned about grief?
That it's a process, and everybody's different, and how you see things, how you feel things, how you manage or adjust is different for everybody, and that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to be sad. You just can't stay there.
You just can't stay there, you say.
Right. Yes.
But what would you say to someone who says, I'm stuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get unstuck? What would your advice be, Lisa, to someone who feels as though they're stuck in their grief?
I really think you have to think about it. You do have to think about it. And while you get stuck, I don't know when you get stuck, if you're really processing and thinking about it. I don't know if that makes sense or not. It never leaves you, right? I don't feel like, and it's more about the person, right? You're always going to have that person in your heart. There are great memories. There are good things. There are pieces, that you want to keep and you should hold on to. And those are okay to do. But you can't hide away and not think about yourself. And you have to start thinking about yourself. Nobody likes the word change, right? But how can you shift that? How can you, what is it you can do for yourself? Because I think sometimes people get stuck there because they don't want to live their lives because they feel like they're leaving somebody behind. And I think that's why some people get stuck. They don't really want to think about the hard stuff because it hurts.
Up next for you is movement, and you become a relentless walker and hiker. How long into this do you start to feel your very best?
I would say probably within about a year and a half to 2 years after, my dad passed away, I was finally like hitting my stride, and I was in the best shape I'd been in a really long time. And my husband and I made the decision, we're going to hike the Grand Canyon. Never done that before. We're going to hike down and hike out. And, that was the most amazing experience and made me feel so accomplished and so good. I was on top of the world. Yeah.
So it's January, you're feeling pretty good, and then there's a lump.
Yes.
And
literally.
Literally a lump. And you got to be thinking a million things here.
Yes.
What happened?
The dreaded lump. I went for my, yearly mammogram, and it came back normal, or, nothing present, but I had felt a lump. And so I went to my doctor and shared with the doctor that there was this lump. It didn't seem to be right. It shouldn't be there. The doctor was like, you just had a mammogram. The mammogram came back clear. And I was like, I'm telling you, there's a lump here. It doesn't belong there. I know I've lost a bunch of weight, but I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to be there. And so we decide that I need to go get another mammogram. And on the second mammogram, ladies will know that when you go get a mammogram, it's never good when they want to do multiple. They have you go in, they do what they need to do, and then they have you go and sit and wait. And then they call you back in, and then you go out, and then they call you back in. And I knew that there was something wrong.
Ends up being stage 2 breast cancer?
It ends up being stage 2 breast cancer, meaning there's a lump in my breast, as well as it has spread to my lymph nodes underneath my arm.
Yeah. Well, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this because, Troy, the title of the podcast, mentions breast cancer, mentions losing your parents. And so maybe there are women here or men who have dealt with breast cancer in some way, shape, or form. And this is the part of the story that's most interesting to them. So if you don't mind, I'd like to spend a little time talking about it. Physically, you're at the height of the game for you. You told us it never felt better. And isn't it just amazing now that we can all look back with that big old lens that, I love to look back on and say, my gosh, the universe got you strong so that you could be ready for this battle. Because tell me what you think the Lisa who wasn't in shape, that wasn't taking care of herself, how would she have reacted to getting this diagnosis?
I would have probably responded the way my parents responded.
Yeah.
Devastation, sadness, and this is the end.
Right. But you're not that way. You're fit, you're strong, you're good now. You're really in a different headspace, and it's miraculous that you're in this moment, in that headspace. That can't be understated, how wonderful that is. Because this is going to be a really tough journey for you. And for your family. So what do you do after you get the diagnosis?
Well, there's always that moment of, when you find out something like that, there's that brief moment of, oh my God, what if I die? That's a really hard lens, to really take a strong look at. My husband, I'm glass half full. He's glass half empty. We're yin and yang, and in a lot of ways. And I know his first reaction was, "Oh my God, you're going to die." And so then I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not going to die. I'm going to totally beat this. It's going to be fine." And that's the stance that I took. I took the stance of, this is all going to be good. I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'm going to be stronger for it in the end. My kids both were extremely worried after their experiences with, my family and their loss, the loss of them, that they worried about, well, how is this? Now we have this, what's going to happen? And I was reassuring, and I told them, no, it's going to be good. I'm going to have to have surgery. I'm going to have to do chemo. I'm going to have to do radiation, but I'm going to do all those things, and then I'm going to be fine.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? It may be difficult to answer, but, okay, I'm just going to say it. You lose your sister, you lose your mom, you lose your dad, you have breast cancer. Are you thinking at some level like, okay, I guess, this is how it ends for me too. Yep. I guess they want the whole family gone.
Yes, there's a huge, so my maiden last name is Olson, and I'm like, so what did the Olsons do to make this happen? What we've done something to cause this. This must be the way it's going to be,
But it's not the way it's going to be, because you end up beating breast cancer.
I do.
How was the journey? How was going through it? Was it the hair? Was it all the things that people talk about? What was the Lisa experience?
Yes, it's all the things. I think it's surreal as you're doing it, and I think being in pandemic times caused an even more unique experience because I had to do the journey alone. My family members were not allowed to be at the hospital when I had the surgery. They weren't allowed to be in the chemo room when I was having chemo. I had to go by myself. They weren't allowed to come with me to radiation. They weren't allowed to come with me to doctor's appointments. And so, my poor husband drove me everywhere during that time because I couldn't drive, and I couldn't do a lot. It was really hard for him to leave me at the door each time and have to wait, then come and get me. And so, when you have surgery for breast cancer, there's a lot of things that can happen. I had a lumpectomy. I feel very fortunate in that. But it did mean that I had to have reconstruction surgery as well. And so I had the lumpectomy, I had my lymph nodes removed, and then I had reconstruction all done at once, everything one fell swoop. You do not realize how much you use your arms, your upper body, your stomach, on an every moment basis until you have that kind of surgery. And you cannot do anything for yourself. Nothing.
Picking up a fork, impossible.
Anything, sitting down, standing up, leaning over, it hurts to do everything. Sitting still on the couch, it's fixing yourself things, going to the bathroom, taking a shower. These are all, I needed help in every situation.
That sounds humbling.
Oh, it's extremely humbling. The hair was probably, for me as a woman, was the most devastating part. Your wife who cuts hair, I had really long blonde hair and she cut it real short for me. because at the time there wasn't anybody, we were in the midst of the pandemic, every place was shut down. And the thought of my long blonde hair falling out in clumps sounded really devastating and really awful.
Yeah.
So I got hair cut. She helped me out. And
She's a good lady.
She is a good lady. She's a great lady. She gave me a great short haircut, which I am eternally grateful for. So, and then within 3 weeks, all my hair fell out. And the hard part is that at about the almost 3 week mark, my hair had started to fall out in clumps, and it hurt. The experience of that was just awful. And so every time I touched my head, a wad of hair came out. And, women, we identify ourselves as, by our hair a little bit, I'll be honest. I mean, it's just part of who we are. And I finally one day said to my husband, I need you to just shave my head. You got to just shave my head. It hurts, because I would just sit and cry because it hurt so bad.
I wanted to ask for other moms who might be listening to the podcast right now, how hard was it to be a mom while you were fighting breast cancer? Was it tough to not be able to do all the things you wanted to do?
Yeah, it really was. My son was a senior in high school, so his experience because of the pandemic wasn't a normal senior experience. And then you add, he has a mom who has cancer on top of that. And I pretty much was either sitting on the couch, sleeping on the couch, going to doctor's appointments, or sleeping, in bed most of that time.
How long was that, the chemo process for you?
I did it for 3 months, and I had every other week. And the kind of chemo that I had 2 kinds of chemo. The first kind of chemo is the kind they call the red devil. It's the one that has the biggest punch and causes you the most the most side effects, in my opinion. So nauseousness and not being able to eat, and the hair. Your skin changes, all the lovely side effects that go with that.
Did the role ever change with your husband? It sounds to me like when I've talked to people who have been through chemotherapy, that it becomes an incredibly depressing, ominous attitude. It can overtake them. And I'm wondering if at any point that you saw a role reversal with your husband where he became more positive or more supportive that way.
Yes. He really shifted into just, okay, we gotta, here's what we need to do. This is how we've got to go. And, I'm very fortunate. My husband retired from his profession as a police officer. And so, it was great timing because, he had retired just the year before. And so he was able to be with me and take me places. And so he really became, my cheerleader for me, and reminding me, at times I would get down on myself of, I can't do this. And it's so frustrating. And I can't, chemo causes what they call chemo brain, where you can't, your things are foggy and you can't remember things, and you struggle sometimes to talk or to talk in complete sentences. And, and I'd be like, oh, this is so frightening. I get very upset with myself. And he would be like, sweetheart, you just had surgery, 2 months ago. You just finished chemo, so he would coach me and remind me about how far I'd come.
So he became a glass half full.
Yes. Cause I needed that. Cause there at moments, right. I would be frustrated and I would be angry with myself, and he'd remind me about, all the good stuff and all how far I'd come.
Did you consider any other healing to go with the chemotherapy, or was when the doctor prescribed the chemo to you, were you just clear that was the direction you were going in, and you were going to approach the cancer with chemo and radiation?
Yes. So I mentioned I'm a firstborn, and I'm an A-type personality, and I'm a rule follower. So the doctor said to me, here are the things. If we do this, this, and this, here is your survival rate. And I couldn't argue with the numbers. He laid it out very clear for me. If you do all these things, you have a 94% chance of death not returning. If you do this and this, and you don't do, you do this in chemo, but you don't do radiation, here's your chances. If you do this and you only do the surgery, here's your percentage rate, right? So he laid those out for me, and I was like, well, it's a numbers game, and I'm all about getting an A. So 94% sounds pretty darn good to me.
She's great. Yeah. She's got to get the A. Yeah.
To get an A.
Yes. Yeah. So I needed the A. I've had talked to people who made decisions that they didn't want to do the chemo, or they did a different kind of chemo instead of, because they didn't want their hair to fall out, or, and I just wanted the best chances for it never to come back.
Let's wind down. I just have a couple of questions that I want to ask you before we go. You must almost laugh at anything that comes your way nowadays. I mean, what do you got next, right?
Yep, pretty much. I'm kind of the mind of there is nothing that you can say to me that is more, that could be more challenging, more difficult. What are you going to do? Fire me? What are you going to do? Kill me? I just kind of have this sense of, I have lived through it. I've lived through it all. And, I can't lose perspective of, everybody sees things a different way, and what one person's problem is. To me, all the problems are little. All the problems are little problems.
Isn't it just impressive to, you think, I think literally warrior. I literally think of Lisa as this woman in a movie with a shield, and here comes the first hit with her sister, and then here comes the next sword with her mom, and the next sword with her dad, and the next sword with her breast cancer, and yet she's still standing, and really sounds like she's in a great headspace now.
She has an indomitable spirit, which means that whatever life throws her way, she's going to find a way to move through it. And that's what I found to be so telling, was that her desire to move, to get up, to get off the couch, and to keep moving, and to keep that energy flowing through her.
I feel like you asked her a question at one point, when did she do, or what was it? And I think for me, what I kept wanting to hear from her was, she finally decided. That's what it was. She finally made the choice that she was ready to do the work for herself. That was the moment for me where she flipped the switch and she said, I need to do this. Did you get a sense of that as well?
I got a sense that it must have been a really ugly photo on the driver's license, to be able to look at the driver's license and to go, that does not look like me. Then you're right. Then to decide to make that decision in that moment to say, no, I'm going to change this. I'm going to move. I'm going to do those things where I start taking care of myself. That's powerful. So she had hit bottom, and that driver's license photo proved to be the bottom for her. I wonder if she still has it.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1. To help you feel less alone. 2. Encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3. When you're ready, share your story with us.
Thank you for listening to Learn from People Who Lived It. A reminder again that ASI, or Advanced Systems Integration, designs and installs cutting-edge audio and visual equipment. This woman-owned small business is big enough to find an AV solution for your next boardroom, classroom, council chambers, or courtroom. Bring in ASI and 2 decades of AV experience. Visit ASI-AV.com to see their gallery of work.